your first investment property isn't actually all that hard to qualify for. You probably don't have a lot of debt besides your principal residence, so if you have good enough income and enough capital, everything else is pretty straightforward from a financing standpoint. But what newer investors don't realize is that if your long-term goal is to expand your real estate portfolio to more investment properties, you will likely run into issues with qualifying for future mortgages when your debt starts to multiply, but your income doesn't multiply at the same rate. So, how do real estate investors get 3, 4, or even 5 investment properties? Of course, time will help because over time, your rental income will start catching up and eventually boost your total qualifying income. But if you want to build and grow your real estate portfolio more quickly, what you buy and the order you buy them in will become pretty important. So in this video, I'll share a few strategies that can help you build your real estate portfolio in a shorter period of time. If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you see more videos like this made specifically for real estate investors in Toronto. The most basic thing that banks look at to figure out how much money they can lend you is to see how much income you make, and your income will consist of your employment income plus a portion of other income streams like existing and projected investment income. Essentially, they just want to make sure you have enough money to be able to pay for your mortgage payments every single month. So if you're starting out and you want to qualify for a bigger mortgage, then you should choose investment properties with better rent yields, which will increase your total income, which will help you qualify for a bigger property. Now, if you're thinking that you make good income and a slight bump in rent yields isn't as big of an issue for you, stay with me. Like I mentioned in the beginning, what you buy and the order in which you buy them in still matter if you're thinking about maximizing your total borrowing capacity in the long run. So hang tight because I'll get to that part soon. Now, going back to choosing properties with better rents, what kind of real estate investments in Toronto should you focus on? First of all, the type of property matters. Condos are simpler to manage because the condo management takes care of a lot of building issues. But that also means that you are forced to pay for condo fees each month, which will increase your monthly expenses, and higher expenses lower your rental income. So in other words, condos and condo townhouses will have lower rent yields compared to freeholds. The second thing is that the way a property is split up also matters. For the same size home, you'll likely get lower rents if you rent it out as one unit compared to if you were to split the home into 2 units and rent it out separately. Of course, you can't really split a condo into multiple units, so again, a freehold will give you even better rent yields compared to a condo when you split the house up. Number 3, rent yields typically get better as you go from a single family home to a duplex, to a triplex, to a fourplex, and so on. You typically can get a lower purchase price per square foot for bigger properties, plus expenses also get diluted over more units, which means you will get better net rent yields. And finally, number 4, location matters. If you buy a property in a nice neighborhood, you end up paying a premium for it, but renters don't care as much about this, so investment properties in nicer areas typically give you lower rent yields. And even within the same neighborhood, you'll also find that properties on main roads offer a slight discount. Again, buyers care more about location and are usually willing to pay a premium for it, whereas the location is less of a concern for renters who can move around a lot. So what you generally find is that you can get similar rents on a property on a main road, but because you bought it for a slight discount, you end up getting better rent yields on them. Now, I talked about why properties with better rent yields are important when you're more limited by income, but I also wanted to highlight that it is also very important even if you do have very good income. At the end of the day, getting new mortgages will get harder for you as you grow your real estate investments quickly, so getting better rental income always helps you bump down your debt to income ratio that banks look at when qualifying for you. If you want to be more strategic, it's actually better to choose properties with better rent yields as your first purchase, mainly because they tend to be bigger properties, as I mentioned before. And if you analyze the stress test formula, you'll find that it actually makes a lot of sense to add these bigger purchases to your portfolio sooner than later. Let's see why. When you get a new mortgage for a new property, let's call this property A, banks will test how well you can pay for property A's mortgage using a stress test interest rate, which is usually much higher than the actual rate you'll be paying. For example, you might be able to get a variable rate right now at 1.5%, but since property A is stress test at 5.25%, your bank debt to income ratio is much higher than it actually is. But this is still okay because you don't have as much debt right now since it's your first income property. Then when you buy your next property, let's call that property B, here's how your new total debt to income ratio is calculated. Instead of using the higher stress test rate for A, the banks will now use property A's actual mortgage rate and amount, and the higher stress test rate will only be applied to the new property B's debt. Now, let's try to simplify this concept and just ignore other debt and other income for now. When you do that and you look at the total debt to income ratio, you'll find that it's basically a variation of a weighted average between property A and property B's debt to income ratio. And so to help us qualify for as much as possible, we'll want to lower this total amount. So if you take a closer look at this formula, you'll realize that the order that you make your purchase will make a difference. If you buy a smaller property first for A and a bigger property later for B, then you'll have more weight against a higher debt to income ratio for B, which increases your total debt to income ratio. But if you swap that around and buy a bigger property first and a smaller property second, this gives you less weight with the higher debt to income ratio, which lowers your total ratio and will increase your total borrowing power. Once you understand this, it should be clearer in terms of how you should structure your purchases so that you can build up a bigger real estate portfolio in a shorter period of time. Just to hammer it in, perhaps we can go through a few examples to see how it would apply to different situations. Let's say you want to diversify your real estate investments and buy both a house and a condo in Toronto. Is there a better order to purchase these two properties so that you can maximize your total borrowing capacity? Based on what we just talked about, you will be able to get a lower total debt to income ratio if you buy a bigger property with better rent yields first. So look into buying a house first since that's easier to qualify for when you have less debt. Then, after you have that bigger purchase with better rent yields, buy the condo next. At that point, you're stacking a higher debt to income ratio for a smaller condo purchase, and that will ultimately be diluted more with a bigger existing investment house with a lower debt to income ratio. In other words, this will lower your total debt to income ratio and you're more likely to qualify for more as a whole. Now, what if you wanted to buy multiple freeholds with similar rent yields? Does it matter what order you buy those in? I would still go with the bigger purchase first, which helps you lower your total debt to income ratio for future purchases. In other words, you'll have more flexibility to maximize your total investment portfolio when you start with bigger purchases first. You should also remember that buying bigger properties earlier on lets you build up equity at a quicker pace. For example, with the same 20% appreciation, you'd gain $300,000 on a $1.5 million home. That 20% appreciation only means $200,000 on a $1 million home, so you would be able to grow more quickly from a capital standpoint if you buy that bigger property first. In a more extreme case, it might even make sense to bump up your down payment percentage for your first investment property for the most aggressive investors with a lot of capital. This might seem counterintuitive since you're using more of your capital, which reduces your buying power. But for those with lots of capital, it typically turns out that you will reach your cap sooner on your borrowing capacity instead of your capital. By increasing your down payment in the beginning, you can actually help to lower your total portfolio's debt to income ratio, which ends up being more effective in helping you qualify for a bigger total portfolio more quickly. Of course, these are very general examples, and what's best for your personal situation might vary based on varying factors like your income, your capital, your debt, your lender, your interest rates, and just your overall investment objectives. Remember that before you make any investment decisions on your own, you should crunch your own numbers to make sure that they make sense for your personal situation. If you need help with making better real estate investing decisions in Toronto and you want an expert to help you out, our team is ready for you. We can look at your requirements and preferences and then match you up with the best investment property that fits your needs. After we help you buy it, our team also provides renovations guidance, leasing, and property management if you need it. So just connect with us if you want to learn more about our services by heading to the link in the description below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and look for us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn if you want to hear from us more regularly. I wish you all the best in your real estate investing journey. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.